Trump has just pulled the plug on $2.1 billion headed straight for Democratic-run cities. Yeah, you heard that right. Billions in federal infrastructure funds, frozen overnight. The timing? Brutal. We are already days deep into a government shutdown. Federal workers on edge, services grinding to a halt. And now, Trump's White House has decided to make the battlefield crystal clear. Blue states will pay first. This isn't a routine budget fight. It's a political weaponization of federal spending. And if you think this is just another partisan squabble, think again. Because the fallout from this move is already rattling mayors, governors, senators, and could set off a chain reaction no one in Washington is prepared for. Here's the kicker. This isn't about money alone. It's about control. Who calls the shots when the government itself is locked in a cage match? And tonight, we're diving straight into the war. So how did we get here? Let's rewind. Just a few days ago, the Senate went down in flames trying to push through dueling stopgap measures to keep the government running. Democrats blocked the Republican plan in a 54-44 vote. Republicans tanked the Democratic version right after. The result? A shutdown that slammed the brakes on most federal operations. Speaker Mike Johnson came out swinging, accusing Democrats of refusing to negotiate in good faith. Over in the Senate, Hakeem Jeffries and Democratic leaders shot back, blaming Republicans for carrying Trump's water and turning negotiations into a hostage crisis. Meanwhile, the White House issued the kind of warning that makes ordinary Americans sit up straight. Mass layoffs of federal workers are now on the table if this standoff keeps dragging on.
And into this deadlock walked Donald Trump, not with an olive branch, not with a compromise, but with a hammer. His administration quietly signed off on freezing billions in infrastructure funds earmarked for projects in blue strongholds like Chicago. The message could not be clearer. In Trump's America, if your state is blue, your roads, bridges, and projects can wait. The moment news of the freeze hit, the political firestorm erupted. Democratic mayors and governors lit up the airwaves. Chicago officials blasted it as outright retaliation. California's representatives warned this was the start of a dangerous precedent. Blue state leaders accused the Trump administration of punishing ordinary Americans simply because of how they voted. And it wasn't just Democrats. A handful of moderate Republicans raised eyebrows, too. They warned this tactic, using federal money as a political bludgeon, could backfire spectacularly. After all, if the federal government can flip the switch off for blue states, who's to say red states won't be next when political winds shift? Trump, of course, framed it as leverage. According to his allies, Democrats had refused to negotiate seriously, so why should their cities keep benefiting from Washington's money while Republicans fight for real Americans? The media frenzy only amplified the chaos. Cable news screens lit up with phrases like federal hostage-taking, shutdown war, and revenge politics. Every network had panels screaming over whether this was smart hardball or reckless authoritarianism. And behind the headlines, real-world cracks began to show. Projects dependent on that $2.1 billion put on indefinite hold. Union leaders warned of jobs vanishing. Small contractors wondered if they'd be paid. The shockwaves rippled not through politicians' offices, but through working-class neighborhoods already stretched thin.
But here's where the escalation turns explosive. This wasn't a backroom memo. This was a deliberate public signal. Trump wanted Democrats and voters to know that he could squeeze the states that opposed him and make it hurt. The immediate fallout? Fury. Lawsuits are already being drafted by attorneys general in Democratic-led states. Expect legal challenges claiming this kind of funding freeze is unconstitutional, that once Congress appropriates money, the executive branch can't just choke it off. In Congress, the mood is poisonous. Senate Democrats are digging in deeper, promising no deal while Trump is holding American cities hostage. Speaker Johnson is doubling down, insisting Democrats are the ones playing games, while his side is simply tightening the screws.
Meanwhile, moderates in both parties are caught in the crossfire. Some quietly admit they fear being blamed by voters if the shutdown drags on and ordinary services collapse. Think about that. Mail delays, paychecks frozen, airports jammed, even federal food programs disrupted. These aren't abstract numbers, they're daily life. The White House continues to warn of cascading layoffs across agencies. Analysts predict that if the freeze isn't lifted quickly, cities like Chicago could see major projects stall, leaving thousands of workers without paychecks in the middle of a shutdown. And make no mistake, this is no longer a theoretical policy fight. Legal experts are pointing out that Trump's funding freeze could open a constitutional showdown. Congress controls the purse, the executive enforces, but Trump is blurring that line, weaponizing budget execution as a partisan sword. That's why some are calling this the boldest, most dangerous escalation of shutdown politics in modern U.S. history.
Because here's the chilling part. Once a president shows you can freeze funds to punish political opponents, it sets a precedent, and presidents don't tend to give power back once they've grabbed it. But here's the part nobody's talking about. What happens if Trump actually gets away with this freeze? If courts uphold the freeze, if Republicans stay in lockstep, if Democrats can't force a reversal, then this shutdown war doesn't just drag on. It transforms the very way America governs itself. And the next phase, it's darker, riskier, and far more personal for millions of Americans. So let's strip this down. What happens if Trump actually gets away with this freeze? First, the precedent is staggering. Never before in modern U.S. history has a president so openly targeted opposition states by choking off federal dollars. Sure, presidents have delayed, shifted, or redirected spending, but to weaponize a shutdown, to turn it into a financial war against blue states, that's a new frontier. Legal scholars are already warning. This move tears at the separation of powers. Congress controls the purse. That's Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. The president can't just decide who gets paid and who doesn't. But Trump is betting that political paralysis will let him push the boundary further than anyone before. Democrats call it authoritarian. Trump calls it leverage. But here's the truth. Both sides know this isn't just about a shutdown. It's about reshaping the rules of political combat. Think back. Richard Nixon had his infamous enemies list. Bill Clinton clashed with Republicans over budget standoffs in the 90s. Barack Obama faced a Republican-led shutdown in 2013, but none of them pulled the plug on billions in funding specifically to hurt their political enemies. That's why this moment feels different.
And Trump's strategy isn't subtle. By freezing $2.1 billion for Democratic cities, he's telegraphing a message to voters. Elect Democrats and your community suffers. Elect Republicans and maybe you'll get rewarded. It's raw power politics. It's revenge dressed as fiscal policy. Meanwhile, Democrats see survival on the line. If they let this stand, they fear every future Democratic administration will face similar sabotage the next time Republicans take control. That's why you're hearing words like constitutional crisis, dangerous precedents, and assault on democracy. And they may not be wrong, because if this tactic works once, it becomes standard playbook. So where does this all go? Let's lay out 3 possible futures. Scenario 1, the courts strike back. Attorneys general in blue states file lawsuits. Federal judges block the freeze. Maybe even the Supreme Court gets dragged in. Trump loses and Democrats claim a victory for checks and balances. But you already know what happens next. Trump doesn't back down. He weaponizes the court battle itself, telling his supporters the deep state sabotaged him. It becomes more fuel for his base. Scenario 2, the freeze sticks. Courts hesitate, Republicans hold the line, the funding freeze stays. Cities like Chicago bleed as projects halt, workers go unpaid, and Democratic governors face mounting crises. Trump frames it as proof his strategy works. Democrats howl, but ordinary Americans, the ones living in those cities, pay the price. Anger builds, but who gets blamed? That's the political gamble. Scenario 3, the standoff drags on. Neither side blinks. The shutdown stretches from days into weeks, then into months. The economy takes a hit. Credit markets jitter. Federal workers miss multiple paychecks. And by the time Congress finally cuts a deal, the damage is baked in. Trust in government shredded, and faith in bipartisan compromise obliterated.
Each of these scenarios carries massive stakes, and none of them ends cleanly. Because once you escalate to using billions of dollars as a political weapon, there's no easy off-ramp. Now, think about what this means on the ground. It's not just Chicago or California. It's the single mother who suddenly can't count on a construction paycheck. It's the federal worker in Virginia furloughed for weeks. It's the contractors in Pennsylvania told to wait it out. And politically, every one of those people becomes a pawn in a larger game. Democrats will point to them as victims. Trump will call them collateral damage in a bigger war against what he brands radical Democrats. This isn't governance anymore. This is political trench warfare. And ordinary Americans, they're the ones caught in the crossfire. If you want to know where this road leads, history offers warnings. During Nixon's Watergate years, political enemies were targeted through the IRS and FBI. It created a collapse of trust so severe that Nixon had no choice but to resign. In the 1990s, Newt Gingrich's shutdown battle with Clinton backfired. Republicans took the blame, and Clinton's approval rating soared. Even more recently, the 2018 shutdown under Trump himself was remembered less for his toughness than for the images of unpaid TSA workers and grounded flights. The lesson is clear. Play hardball with shutdowns, and it can boomerang. But Trump is betting this time is different, that in today's polarized America, blame won't be clear-cut, and raw power will outweigh public backlash. That's a gamble, not just for his administration, but for the entire system of American governance.
Here's the bigger picture. Trump doesn't just want to win this standoff. He wants to redraw the rules. He wants Democrats to walk into 2026 knowing that if they hold out, their states will bleed first. That's how you change behavior, not with persuasion, but with punishment. And Democrats, they see it as existential. If they cave now, they fear setting a precedent that will haunt them for decades. That's why this battle feels less like a budget fight and more like a civil war inside the machinery of government. So ask yourself, is this governance or is this revenge politics? The coming weeks could go three very different ways. Courts intervene, forcing Trump to retreat, but giving him fresh fuel for grievance politics. The freeze sticks, reshaping how federal funds are used and abused. Or the shutdown drags on, damaging millions of lives, while both parties double down. None of these options rebuilds trust. All of them deepen division. So here's the chilling question. If Trump can pull $2.1 billion from blue states today, what stops future presidents, Democrat or Republican, from doing the same tomorrow? Think about that. So now I'll ask you directly, is this accountability or is this pure revenge politics? Do you see Trump as using leverage or abusing power? And if you lived in one of these cities, how would you feel knowing billions in your tax dollars just vanished overnight? Drop your thoughts below. I want to see where you stand. And one last thing, this story is far from over. The lawsuits are coming, the pressure is building, and the fallout, it's only just beginning. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next.